When you look at everything surrounding this matchup, the single biggest thing that changes the entire conversation is health. And for the first time in a while, it finally feels like the arrow is pointing up for the 49ers. Seeing Trent Williams back out on the practice field is not a small detail. That's a massive development, especially considering how important he is to everything this offense wants to do. The fact that he was going through technique work, moving, engaging, and taking part in position drills tells you the team believes there's a legitimate chance he plays. If the 49ers didn't think that was possible, he wouldn't have been out there at all. That alone should catch your attention as a fan. Think about what Trent Williams means in this game specifically. You're talking about going into Philadelphia against a defensive front that can wreck games if you let it. Having your all-pro left tackle out there, even if he's not 100%, changes protections, changes play calling, and changes how comfortable Brock Purdy can be in the pocket. I'll ask you this right now, and be honest in the comments. If Trent Williams plays, do you believe the 49ers can win this game, yes or no? Then there's Ricky Pearsall, and while his role might not carry the same headline weight, it still matters. Seeing him running routes, cutting, accelerating, and catching passes is another sign that this offense may be getting a key piece back at the right time. Even limited, availability forces the Eagles to account for one more weapon. In a playoff game, that kind of thing matters more than people realize. One extra option can be the difference between a stalled drive and points on the board. This is also where perspective is important. The 49ers don't need to be perfectly healthy. They just need to be healthier than they were, and that's exactly what's happening. Momentum with injuries can swing quickly in January, and right now it's swinging in their favor. If you appreciate getting these kinds of updates without the panic or the hype, make sure you like the video and subscribe. We're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you helps get us there. Now, health alone doesn't win playoff games. It just opens the door. The next step is understanding who's still missing, who's trending the right way, and how the rest of this injury report shapes what the 49ers can realistically do on Sunday. That's where things get interesting, and that's exactly what we're getting into next. Once you get past the excitement of seeing a few key names back on the field, this is where you really have to slow down and read the injury report the right way. Not emotionally, not optimistically, but realistically. The 49ers are still dealing with some significant absences, and how they manage around those is going to matter just as much as who returns. The players who didn't practice stand out immediately, and none more than Ricky Pearsall, who is still working through the knee issue. The encouraging part is that he's doing football movements, which tells you this isn't a shutdown situation, but availability is still very much in question. Then you look at the defensive side, and that's where things get thinner. Keion White dealing with groin and hamstring issues is not trending well. And when you combine that with Dwom's ankle situation, you start to see why depth is such a concern. Linebacker is especially fragile right now. Luke Gifford didn't practice, but the sense is he still has a chance to go. If he can't, you're probably looking at practice squad elevations, maybe even more than one. That's not ideal in a playoff game, but it's also something this team has dealt with before. Now let's talk about the limited participants, because that's where the optimism comes back in. Trent Williams being limited is huge. That's the pendulum swinging in the direction of him playing. George Kittle being limited is almost routine at this point, and there's no real concern there. Jordan Elliott and Yetur Gross-Matos also trending toward availability gives this defense at least some stability up front, which they desperately need against an Eagles offense that wants to lean on the run. Here's a question for you, and I really want your take on this. Which injury situation worries you the most heading into this game? Is it linebacker, offensive line depth, or something else entirely? Drop it in the comments. The key takeaway here is this: The 49ers are not suddenly healthy across the board, but they're healthier where it matters most. They're getting leadership and experience back, even if it's not at full strength. In January football, that can be enough to tilt a close game. And now that we understand who's in, who's out, and who's trending, it's time to zoom out and look at the matchup itself. Because on paper this game looks intimidating, but on the field, it might not be what people expect at all. When you stack these two teams side by side, the first reaction for a lot of people is to say, the Eagles are simply better. They have the star power, they have the recent Super Bowl pedigree, and they have the same core players who lifted the trophy not long ago. Offensively, it's easy to see why that narrative exists. Jalen Hurts is still one of the most scrutinized quarterbacks in the league, but he's also proven he can play at an elite level on the biggest stage. Their offensive line remains one of the strongest units in football, and when you add in weapons like A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Saquon Barkley, it looks overwhelming on paper. But football games aren't played on paper, and this is where things start to get interesting. Because while the names are mostly the same, the production hasn't been. The Eagles' offense hasn't consistently looked like the dominant unit we remember. Drives stall. First and second downs don't generate momentum. And too often, they find themselves in third and long situations where they haven't been able to deliver. I want you to be honest here. Which side of the ball worries you more in this matchup, the Eagles' offense or the Eagles' defense? Let me know in the comments. This isn't about saying the Eagles are bad. They're not. It's about recognizing that something hasn't fully clicked. Whether it's play design, rhythm, or execution, they haven't found that same edge. And in the playoffs, that matters. The margin for error shrinks, and teams that rely on flipping a switch don't always get that luxury. From the 49ers' perspective, this is important because it shifts the mindset. This isn't a game where you walk in hoping the other team makes mistakes. This is a game where you believe the matchup itself gives you an opening. The 49ers may not match the Eagles' resume, but they don't have to. They just need to be sharper in the moments that matter. If you're enjoying this kind of breakdown that cuts through the noise and focuses on what actually happens on the field, make sure you like the video and subscribe. We're building toward 1,000 subscribers here, and your support keeps this kind of coverage going. Because once you move past the names and the narratives, the real edge in this game comes down to something much more specific: coaching, situational football, and especially what happens on third down. That's where this matchup could quietly swing in the 49ers' favor. And that's what we're diving into next. This is where the conversation shifts from talent to control, because in playoff football, coaching and situational execution can outweigh star power. When the 49ers have the ball, you're looking at Kyle Shanahan going against one of the most respected defensive minds in the league, and that matchup is close to a wash. But when the roles flip and the 49ers are on defense, that's where a real edge starts to appear. Robert Saleh going up against a first-year offensive coordinator is not a small detail, especially when that offense hasn't consistently met expectations. The numbers back this up in a quiet but important way. The Eagles have struggled on third down all season. They're converting at just 37%, which puts them near the bottom of the league. That means too many 3-and-outs and too many missed opportunities to sustain drives. Now compare that to the 49ers defense, which has been roughly average on third downs despite all the injuries. If San Francisco can keep the Eagles under 40% on third down, that changes the flow of the entire game. So let me ask you this directly. If the 49ers win the third down battle, do they win this game? Yes or no? On the other side of the ball, this is where the opportunity becomes even clearer. The 49ers have been one of the best third down offenses in football, converting close to half of their opportunities. Even in games where things haven't looked smooth, they've found ways to stay on the field. The Eagles' defense, as talented as it is, has been surprisingly vulnerable in these situations. That gap is real, and it's exploitable. This is also where Brock Purdy becomes central to the entire equation. He doesn't need to be spectacular. He just needs to be smart. Protecting the football is non-negotiable in this game. One turnover could swing momentum in an environment like Philadelphia. Clean decisions, quick reads, and taking what the defense gives you can be enough if the third down execution is there. If you like smart, game situation breakdowns instead of hot takes, hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. We're getting closer to 1,000 subscribers, and this is the kind of playoff coverage we're committed to delivering. Because once you understand the coaching edge and the third down math, the upset path starts to come into focus. It's not flashy, and it's not easy, but it's very real. Now it's time to talk about how the 49ers can actually execute this plan from the opening drive to the final whistle. Now it all comes down to execution, because the path for a 49ers upset is clear, but it's narrow. This is not a game where they can ease into things and see how it goes. They need to start fast, and that starts with the opening script. If the first drive ends in a 3-and-out, that crowd in Philadelphia is going to be loud and relentless. The 49ers need early rhythm, even if it's just a couple of first downs, to settle everyone in and take some air out of the building. Offensively, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they flip the usual formula. Instead of pounding the run early, it makes sense to get the ball out of Brock Purdy's hands quickly. Short passes, quick hitters, easy completions. That slows down the pass rush and forces the Eagles to defend sideline to sideline. Once that happens, the run game can start to open up, especially if the Eagles lean into lighter defensive looks. And if they do, the 49ers have to punish that. Defensively, discipline is everything. The Eagles are going to want to put the ball in Saquon Barkley's hands and let Jalen Hurts use his legs more than he did during the regular season. That means tackling has to be sharp, gap integrity has to be clean, and missed assignments simply can't happen. This isn't about making highlight plays. It's about doing your job snap after snap. And then there's the biggest rule of all: no turnovers. You don't need to win the turnover battle by 2 or 3. You just can't lose it. A clean game, solid third down execution, and staying within the flow of the game gives the 49ers a real chance late in the fourth quarter. And in the playoffs, that's all you can ask for. So let me ask you this as we wrap it up. Do you believe the 49ers can go into Philadelphia and pull off this upset? Or do you think the Eagles' experience takes over? Drop your answer in the comments, and let's talk it out. If you've made it this far, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're chasing 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps keep this kind of in-depth 49ers coverage coming all postseason long. Now that the stage is set, the rest is up to those 3.5 hours on the field. It's win and advance, or go home. And we're about to find out exactly what this team is made of.